Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the special Elvis night at the Ballard Centre. Nice to see a lot of people here. And indeed, thanks to Jim for his disco. You've already had a taste of his music, and you'll be back again later. Also, there's a karate display, but as you know, we have our very special guest, Mr. Ed Parker, with us tonight. And Ed, as you know, was a former bodyguard and close personal friend, and also karate instructor of Elvis Presley. So could I ask you, once again, please, a big hand for Mr. Ed Parker. Well, we're going to talk about Elvis tonight. So I know Ed is here to get involved with karate over the coming weekend. And as I said, there is a display later. But Ed, let's talk about Elvis. And you have written this book, which is called Inside Elvis. And unlike some of the other books which you've seen around recently, this is a very affectionate look at Elvis, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I felt very close to Elvis because of the fact that we in Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, once you become a friend of ours, Chris, whether you're right or wrong, we'll back you, even if he's our guest. I found Elvis to have very similar qualities in terms of kindness and what have you. And so we became extremely good and close friends.
Well, just how much time did you spend with Elvis?
Well, I knew him for 17 years, but there are many times when I would talk to him for 7 or 8 hours, and he and I would discuss things that he did not even wish to discuss with his father. He didn't feel in some of the areas that close to his father, and some of the topics that we would discuss.
How and when did you first meet?
Elvis and I met in 1960. I was putting on a karate demonstration for a group of doctors who wanted to examine my hands because they felt that those of us in the karate profession, once we hit boards and bricks, we could never use our hands for any other useful purpose, and they wanted to see a demonstration and examine my hands. Well, Elvis happened to be at the same hotel where I was putting on my exhibition while doing the picture Wild in the Country with Susie Wells. He was in the audience this day, and after my demonstration had concluded, he came up, and it was his attitude that impressed me when he said, "I don't think you know me, but my name is Elvis Presley."
Because, of course, by 1960, he would have been very much the king of rock and roll.
Yes, he was very well known then. And then we became very close. We talked at length about karate. Then found out he was involved while in Germany, stationed in Germany. He had been involved with karate. And he liked what I did because he felt what I did was very progressive. I am a rebel in terms of the martial arts. When it was introduced to Hawaii, my professor told me that what might work in Japan or China does not necessarily work in America, so we had to revise. Elvis noticed this, and he noticed that I, being in America, was somewhat of a rebel, and he too in his field was a rebel, so again, there was compatibility there.
How good was Elvis at karate?
Elvis was an excellent black belt. He was able to take pain. He'd get mad at me naturally with his head on occasion, but still I love the fact that he would fight back. And I think that a true champion is one who not only can dish out a fight, but also take, and that's what makes it.
You said that you had things in common. I know one of them was religion, wasn't it? It was important to you both.
Well, he was a great believer in Christ. We discussed topics. He always talked about other religions. He searched and read what others had to say. And I remember once we were talking about reincarnation, and I told him, I said, if you mean resurrection, then I go along with it. But if you're talking about reincarnated from one soul into another soul, or from a soul into an animal, and then I said, all you have to do is go back and look at Christ in terms of an example. So I asked him, are you a believer of Christ? He said, yes. I said, did Christ come from another being? No. What was the example that he had said? He said, whatever he said, we also have to do the same thing. So he liked the fact that when we discuss things, we discuss it and use a lot of logic instead of getting involved with so many other, far concepts.
If I may quote from the book as we go along, Inside Elvis, still talking about religion for a moment or two, he's quoted in there by you as saying that he felt his talent came only from God. And also, he said that he saw himself something as a missionary for Christ.
Yes, I remember once we were in Minneapolis when we were doing a concert, and someone yelled from the audience. He said, "Elvis, you're the king," you know. He said, "I am not, Christ is." And I thought that was really nice, because as he came on stage, he looked at me, just making sure that I acknowledged what he had said. But yeah, we did talk a lot about this reading stud, heavenly being, supreme being. We discussed one day, I don't know whether you're familiar with the church I belong to, but we believe in doing a lot of work for our kindred dead. That's why we do a lot of genealogical work. And I'm hoping to find my ancestors, because originally the ancestors that I have came from England. We discussed this, and we went by the Mormon temple one day, and he said, "What goes in that temple?" And I told him that we do work for our kindred dead. He said, "Well, one of these days I'm going to go in." I said, "Elvis, you know your money, you get you in there." But I explained to him that we did work for the dead because there are certain ordinances that had to be performed on this earth. And he said, "You mean to say I can see my mother?" I said, "Oh, certainly you're going to see her. It's just that she took the bigger journey." And he believed that. He believed the fact that he would see his mother. But he also made this comment. He said, "You know, my father remarried." He said, "What do you think of me not calling my stepmother mother?" I said, "Hey, I wouldn't call her mother too. Yeah, I've been feeling bad about it, but I can't get myself to call her mother." I said, "Well, don't call her mother." He said, "But you know another thing too." He said, "When my father remarried, the church would not allow them to be married again in the church." He said, "So therefore, I cut off all of my donations," and these were thousands of dollars, to the church. He said, "By golly, a year later, they reneged and revamped their policy and said that my father could remarry in the church." He said, "I know they wanted my money."
Talking about a lighter moment, wasn't there once a time when the Pope actually asked for Elvis?
Yes, he was in Germany at the time, and he was asked to come off of, they had some kind of
It's an army
maneuver, and he was asked to come to the commander's office and to be prepared to go to see the Pope, because the Pope's private aircraft was to come and pick Elvis up so that he could entertain the youth of the church. And he said, "If my buddies have to go out there and freeze, I go out and freeze too. So you tell the Pope I'm not coming."
Now, you were closest to Elvis, and by this I mean you were acting as bodyguard. After his comeback performances in the early 1970s, his comeback on the stage I'm talking about. So we're talking from what year onwards when we're talking about a bodyguard?
1969 is really when he started to come back. He hated the movies he did. He thought it was a piece of junk, a lot of them. He really felt bad about it, but the colonel kind of encouraged him and made deals and kept him busy. But he felt he was away from his fans, and he didn't want that. That's why he wanted to come back to be among his fans, because as his mother had told him, it was the fans that made him. And he always felt that way. So when he did get back in 1969 on stage, he liked that eye-to-eye contact. He liked that personal contact with the fans. He loved the screams and the roars. And again, he gained his confidence that his fans, in fact, they loved him.
What were they like? There must have been a tremendous atmosphere at those concerts.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I'm telling you, we had fans. You wanted to hear some of the greatest lies of all time, listening to some of them, in terms of getting to Elvis. They would do anything to get there.
He had a tremendous repertoire on stage, didn't he? How do you remember all those songs?
Elvis had a photographic memory. In fact, I wrote a constitution for our association, and he remembered every word, every page, and could quote it verbatim. And here I wrote the thing, and I couldn't remember from page to page.
Was that how he managed to include even requests and some of those stuff?
Yes, yeah. He was, I think he was excellent in terms of knowing what the audience wanted. His choice of songs were good. He would boost the audience, put them back down, and boost them back up again. He loved playing with the audience.
What about the other things on stage? He was a tremendous perfectionist, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. I mean, You know, it's quite interesting because I was on tour once and I wanted to do something, and one of the members of the band had an instrument, and I asked and made a request that I play it. Well, when I started to play it, the man was very intrigued with my ability, but I made the statement that I did not read music. He said, look, I don't read music, and Elvis doesn't read music, and I didn't even know that. He didn't even read music, but he could hear when a note was off from a trumpet or a note was off from a violin. He looked right to where it was coming from, and he had a keen ear.
And didn't he stop in the middle of some song?
Oh yeah, he did that. Yeah, he did that a lot.
What about some of the other things on stage? There's a story about a water pistol.
Yes, we were in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, and it seems like one of the fans decided to shoot Elvis on the stage. So Elvis looked at another person who had a gun, so he requested that, and he started to shoot back at the individual, and 5 other guns came up, and boy, there was a big pistol shoot up on the stage, and he enjoyed himself. He really enjoyed himself.
And he also got the kids up on stage.
Yes, he did.
What would you do then?
Well, if you wanted a scarf, he was a sucker for a child. I mean, all you have to do is put a little gal up, a little boy up, and you go right to him and put a scarf on him. And he was good that way.
What about the taking care of business rings?
The rings and
And you've got a pendant there. This, I don't know if you can see that. That's the initials on there, TCB, which is taking care of business. Perhaps you can explain it more.
well, as you know, below this there's a lightning bolt. And taking care of business, when you do that, you have to do it as fast as lightning. And I remember once at 4 o'clock in the morning, he decided to buy 11 Mercedes-Benz. And so what he wanted for, he said, well, as I think back over the years, there have been a lot of people that were nice to me, and I'd like to give them this Christmas a Mercedes-Benz. And there's 11 of them that I'd like to purchase. He said, Elvis, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, so the dealer's not there, we'll call him at the home. They called the dealer at the home at 4 in the morning, and let me tell you, the guy snapped at attention and was down at the dealership within a matter of minutes to make those sales.
And did you get one of those cars?
No, I got a Cadillac.
Tell us how you got that. It's similar.
I happened to be in Vegas after Elvis had just gotten through with one of his engagements at Las Vegas. And he decided to call me because he had intentions of making some martial arts films. He was so desirous of 3 things. Number 1, he wanted to come to England so badly because of the fact he knew how loyal his fans were here, more so than the United States. He wanted to become a dramatic actor without singing, with the utilization of the martial arts in his story. So, and then, of course, he wanted to go to Japan. But in this, your question even said the Cadillac. The Cadillac. This occasion was to discuss the making of a movie where we use martial arts. And while there, he said, you know, I want to buy you a car. I said, Elvis, I own 4 cars. He said, they're old. I said, they're a year old. He said, well, they have ashes in the ashtray. I said, Elvis, I love you for you and not for your money. And he made the comment, he says, I know that, that's why I want to buy your car. Well, he did. He bought me a Cadillac. It was about 10 o'clock that night. He called the dealer. And the dealer didn't believe it was Elvis until Elvis came on the phone. The minute he heard the voice, he realized it was Elvis. He said he wanted that car delivered in an hour. That's 10 o'clock was when they closed the shop. The car was delivered in an hour. He handed the keys to me and said, enjoy it in good health. The very next day, he felt very bad about the occasion because he didn't get my wife anything. He then decided to go down to the shop and purchase an $11,000 mink coat so that my wife wouldn't be slighted.
She was happy with that, was she?
Well, she got both the car and the mink coat.
What about that ring that you've got on? You showed me
The ring.
backstage a little.
It's just a small little thing with 20 diamonds in it.
Can you hold it up?
Yeah.
Can I be very rude and ask you how much roughly that would be worth?
I would say this is about $15,000 to $18,000. That would be how many pounds?
$15,000, around about £7,500.
Ah, something. It's just a meager
That was
No, that was, oh yeah, that was another present. This is another present there. One day I was doing a picture called Kill the Golden Goose. And I had to have my hair real long. He said, by golly, you remind me of an Indian. He said, here, take this with you. So he gave it to me because it's a $2.50 gold piece that we had as a coin in America. And this would be
the head of an American Indian.
I'd say it's about a $2,300 ring.
What about after the performances on stage? What was Elvis like then, backstage? Most people didn't see.
Okay, Elvis was extremely nervous. And so many times we'd go to a community where the mayor wanted to give him a key to the city or the governor wanted to talk to him. And he really didn't care for that because he knew that when he went on stage, he had to psych himself to do a job that would be pleasing to his fans. And I remember the president's brother once, our stupid president, he's a dummy. But anyway, his brother came backstage one night when we were in Alabama and wanted to see Elvis.
We're talking about Billy Carter.
Billy Carter.
We've heard about him.
We've heard about him. Yeah. Well, anyway, he said hi. I said hi. So where you plan to go? He said, I plan to see Elvis. I said, no, you're not. He said, you know who I am? I said, I know who you are, but you're not seeing Elvis. And fortunately, one of the other guys who booked the shows and said, oh, I've talked to Elvis already. So I opened the door and I said, Elvis, you want to talk to Billy? I guess so. So I have good. He said, by golly, Elvis is better protected than my brother. I said, you better believe that.
You had to be very careful as a bodyguard because you often got death threats. So that was right.
Well, you see, more so than most people realize. But we could not tell the media, the press, about these incidences. There were a lot of times they wanted to kill him. I remember once they planned to kill Elvis, and this was real to me. They planned to kill him in Florida because they felt he had a biggest name, and by killing him, they could always use that as a crutch in terms of intimidating the other actors and giving money to their cause. Well, it was a real threat. And on this special occasion, we did not tell Elvis. Normally, when we got the word, I tried not to say anything to Elvis. And regardless of that, he would have gone on anyway. But this special night, we were told that he was not to pick up any of the gifts that were placed on stage, nor to accept any of the dolls that he normally got from the fans. So we talked to the arena security to make sure that all gifts were taken away and not handed to Elvis. Well, as Elvis would go up to get him, he noticed that they kept taking it. And so after the show was over, he said, come on now, something was wrong. Well, why? And he said, Ed, he was behind me throughout the whole show. He's practically kissing my fan, he said. And
another mix up in American words.
That's right. And he said, and I noticed he kept taking these gifts away. I said, well, Elvis, we had a threat on your life and we had to get these things taken away. He said, well, did the security arena know that there might have been a bomb in it? I said, no. If we would have told them, they would have taken it off the stage. I said, I guess you're right. So that was one of the many ones. I remember another time there was a threat that they wanted to kill him on stage if he didn't leave $60,000 in a certain place. Well, in this case, the FBI came on the case, and they're out of Scotland Yard, you know. And as we were looking for these individuals throughout the audience who might be the guilty persons, why one of our bodyguards saw this nervous-looking individual and they were about ready to pull a gun, because they all packed a gun, by the way, when on tour.
Including Elvis.
Including Elvis. Not when he was on stage, though. Elvis always packed 2 guns. Not on stage. Okay, but then this mysterious-looking character was also about ready to pull a gun. And what it was our bodyguards going to shoot it out with another FBI agent. So we found out. We almost had a disaster there, needlessly.
Well, in a secure sort of environment that must have been, how did he manage to live a sort of normal life? If you wanted to see a movie or go to a show, how would he arrange that?
Very simple. He leased a theater out. That's all. And spend the whole night by having other films from other theaters brought in He'd hired a projectionist. He'd hired a gal that served the candy and the popcorn. He rented the whole theater for the whole evening, and we'd just sit in there and watch 3 or 4 films until about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and then go on home.
He lived by night?
He lived by night. But this wasn't so. He did not live by night until the fans started to bother him. So he used the evening as a cover of darkness. The cover of darkness was his security in terms of not being bothered.
So what would have been a typical Elvis day? When would he have gone out and when would he have
Well, Elvis would probably get up about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, have breakfast, then maybe have lunch at 12 o'clock at night, and dinner about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Go to bed. I remember one night my wife and I decided to go with him at 4 o'clock in the morning because he wanted to tour the city. And even then, at 4 in the morning, we'd have guys trying to pick a fight with him. You know, I remember we had to chase this one guy one night and finally cornered the guy. Always jumped out and got in his stance, and the other guy just took off. There he was standing in his stance as the guy sped off. So we weren't too lucky that night.
Well, it's something you mentioned earlier, and I think it is something that everybody in this country would like to know. Why didn't he come to this country? You said he wanted to come to this country. You must have ideas why he didn't.
Yeah, there's several reasons, and by the way, I was corrected by the colonel one day.
And there's no relation, by the way. Colonel Tom Parker's no relation.
I hope not, but there might be a possibility. I don't want to find out that to be true, though.
Did you not like him from that?
No, I liked it. I think the colonel was good for Elvis, and I must say I respect him for one thing. He had no other client but Elvis. And Elvis was his only client. And I think he did a very good job in a lot of areas. But at first, he was very hesitant about coming to England or any other foreign country because of the fact I think he felt he would not have control of the finances. That was one of the reasons. But later on, there was a time when he did make arrangements to come here, and it was Elvis who said that he was not in shape to be presentable enough to see his parents. And it was he that, I was told this by the colonel.
So if Elvis had his way, you would have thought that he would have come to this country?
Oh, definitely. We were planning to come. Had he lived within that year, he would have been here, and I would have been here with him.
In those later performances, coming up to 1977 and in the first 8 months of 1977, do you think that some of the magic had disappeared from the performance?
No, I don't think the magic disappeared from his performance. I think the magic disappeared from his life in terms of obtaining some of the goals that he wanted. I hear so many people, you know, he's a lonely and sad individual. He was not sad. He really was not. He was a goal-oriented individual. He had to have those goals before him, you know? And when he had something in his head, believe me, taking care of business took over, no matter what he had to do.
But there were things, according to your book, which did get him down. Obviously, a marriage breakup with Priscilla was one.
Yes, yeah, that is true. I remember one night, I could see he was restless. This was in his Beverly Hills home. And he came over and he talked to me. The first time I ever saw him cry. And he said, you know, Priscilla's planning to leave me, to divorce me. So what do you think? I said, well, the way I look at it, Elvis, I think folks love each other, but never really had the time to like each other. And that's a sad situation. But I feel that here he felt he had everything in life, and then to lose the one thing, I think it hurt him personally as well as his ego, to be honest.
And also his 40th birthday was quite a turning point too.
Yes, he called me at about, what was that, 4 o'clock? About 4 o'clock in the morning. He said, Ed, this is Elvis. I said, yeah, I know. How did you know it's Elvis? How did you know it's me? And who knows what calls me at 4 o'clock in the morning? He said, I'm 40 years old. I said, so? And it really affected him. He thought by being 40, it might, again, he's constantly concerned about the thoughts of his fans. Hey, he'll be living till how long? Then he'll still wow. And he did the same thing on his 41st birthday. People followed me up at 5 in the morning.
In his last couple of years of his life in the book, you say that he had something of a paranoia about his weight.
Yes, he did. It did affect him. You know, he knew. But he wasn't well. He wasn't well. I talked and enticed him to go to Honolulu on his private aircraft. You know, he had a beautiful aircraft. He had several. There were four. They had 4 jets. And this was a beautiful aircraft with 4 jet engines. And that's what he was hoping to come to England with, by the way. And just thinking about it makes me choke up. I'm sorry.
What about some of the other stories? Let's make it clear for the Elvis fans. I mean, there are a lot of bad things that we've heard, and we've heard again about them recently in the press and in books that have been written. I mean, the drugs thing, which always comes up.
Well, the guy that really made a big stink was a guy named Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo Rivera's show was going down the tubes. They were about ready to lose it. And what greater name could have given him, you know, given a greater audience appeal than the name of Elvis Presley? And he used that to boost his show. And by God, I'll tell you, he got just that. There were more people that watched the show that night. But he made many accusations. But if you listen to it intently, he said, it is assumed that, you know, it seemed as if, you know, it was supposed to be. Guys, if I was a supposed son of somebody, I don't want to know who I was a supposed son of, wouldn't you?
It was all supposition.
Tremendous supposition. Then he said that he had ordered these great amount of drugs. Well, it would have killed 25 horses. These drugs were given in bulk, not for Elvis alone, but for the entire crew. When we traveled, yes, the doctor was Elvis's personal physician, but he was also our physician on the road when we needed him. That's every one of us. And so all of the other guys took a lot of those, plus the fact that his two other stepbrothers, you know, used to make a lot of false prescriptions, you know, that are right for this and that. So Elvis would get the blame instead of them. And they were the pill poppers. Yes, Elvis did take pills. There's no doubt about it. And I can tell you that as he took some of these pills, it took less effect on him, so he had to take stronger ones. But he was not an addict. In any way, he was not an addict. Period.
When he did die on August 16, 1977, where were you? How did you hear
I
about
was
it?
on my way. I had just talked to Joe Esposito, who was on his way to see Elvis, making arrangements that particular day. Lisa Marie, his daughter, was to leave Graceland to come back to Los Angeles with a guy named Sam Thompson. Sam Thompson was the brother to Linda Thompson, who was one of Elvis's girlfriends. Well, I was told by Joe that I was to catch the same aircraft after he had come back with Lisa Marie, to catch the same aircraft to meet Elvis that night. It was 20 minutes after he had hung up talking to me that he discovered Elvis's body.
You'd had a premonition of it before, hadn't you?
Yes, I did. After we had gone to Hawaii and we had come back, the first tour we had gone on after that trip from Hawaii, he took ill at the end of the tour, about 3 days more. We had about 3 days to go. He was ill, and I had to take him to his aircraft. And when I looked at him, I thought he was going to die then. He was really in bad shape. And I just knew he wouldn't live out there.
You did actually tell him?
Yes, I did. I told him, Elvis, if this continues, I don't think you'll live out the year. And he was not too happy about it. I've heard other people say, oh, he had premonitions of his death. He knew he was going to die. Not so. If that was so, he wouldn't have said what he did to me. He was upset when I told him.
As we come towards the end, I mean, how do you best like to remember Elvis today?
Well, it's hard to say how do you best like it. All I can say is he had qualities that even I would like to have had. Number one, even though I am a staunch believer in my church, I like to use my hands every now and then and do the laying on of hands my way with a few feet now and then. And that's not right, I understand it. Because once I get involved with some individual like Mike Stone, for instance, and I was the one responsible for having Mike and Priscilla meet. But yet Elvis never held me accountable for that. And as he told me, he said, Ed, in the case of a fraternity suit, he said, it takes two hands to thread a needle. So he didn't blame Mike Stone totally, you know. But yet, he was extremely forgiving. I remember we were going past the Mormon temple, and he said, let's go look up Mike Stone. I said, what do you want to look up Mike Stone for? He said, I want to give him a TCB. Now, TCB was given to those that were very close to Elvis. You were sort of on the in crowd when you got one of this. I said, you want to give this to Mike Stone? He said, yeah. So I want him to know I have no ill feelings about him. I said, well, and I could see Red West, who later wrote a book against Elvis, was furious that he had intentions of giving Mike Stone one of these. So I said, well, there's two ways to look at it. You can make Mike happy, and you can make all of us unhappy. And I'll tell you, you have your choice of what you want to do, Elvis. But if you give Mike Stone this, I will take mine off and throw it away. But that's your choice.
And what was his decision?
I won't give it to you. I said, thank you, Rick.
You didn't give Mike Stone the TCB, did you?
Well, that's why, you see, when I was with Elvis, I think that's one of the reasons he loved my being around with him. Because I told him how it was. Crude as I might have been, I gave him my honest opinion. If I didn't like something, I told him. Too bad, in fact, he had too many people around him that were yes. But they were employees, I was not, so that made a difference. Now, his quality of forgiveness is what I would like to gain one day. The fact that if I don't forget what you've done, Chris, I'll never forgive you. And I hope I can get rid of that and take on the quality of forgiveness that Elvis had.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Parker. If anybody has a question that they'd like to ask Ed in the next minute or so, if you'd like to just shout out and make yourself heard, or perhaps you could put up a hand and we'll come around to you. Yes?
What was Elvis's favourite record?
What was Elvis's favourite record, gentleman over here asked?
His own.
See, I couldn't answer that. I couldn't really answer that. And secondly, I'm not a statistics man. Anyway.
I just wondered if you had one.
No, not really. I don't remember. I know he liked Charo. As far as the picture is, they liked that very well.
Charo was his favourite picture. Okay. What about you then, Ed? Do you have a favourite Elvis song?
Well, the song that I liked was I'm Leaving. You ever hear that song? I remember when he said, Ed, I gotta have you hear the song that I just cut. I said, yeah? What's the name of it? He said, I'm Leaving. And his daughter Lisa Marie said, you leaving again, Daddy? He said, no, Lisa, I just cut a song. I like that because it kind of had qualities of falsetto and kind of reminded me of Hawaii. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah.
What's your, were you very close to Dee personally? Did you know Dee very well at all?
Did I know Dee? Yeah, I knew she was.
What did you think of her?
My father always told me he had nothing good to say about anybody, not too cool to say anything about him, I'd rather not say.
No. What do you think of the book she wrote?
I think she's a very vindictive woman. I think she didn't get some of the things that she had hoped to get. And I think she blamed Elvis too much for the lives of their sons. It was the sons on many occasions that begged Elvis to go on the tours and begged him for jobs. It wasn't the other way around where he beguiled them.
Would you say the book was accurate?
No.
No,
a lot of things are inaccurate.
I've heard from a pretty reliable source that she attended a convention in the States not so very long ago, earlier this year, and she got booed off the stage.
True. That's right.
That's true, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I think if you really like Elvis, and I assume everyone is a fan of Elvis here tonight, then read this, because this is what you'd like to remember him by. I'm sure of that. I don't know if you've read this book. Have you? Have you read it?
It's Inside Elvis?
Yes, yeah. Don't you find this entertaining account in the way that you'd like to remember him?
Yeah, but then there's so many books around, isn't there? You know?
Yeah, there are a lot of other good points to other books.
You know,
Like the Becky Yancey book now was a good book, but many of the stories she quoted were not stories that happened to her. She had heard that it was happening to some other that was around Elvis. But a lot of the stories she claimed happened to her were stories that happened to some of the members that hung around Elvis.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone upstairs?
Geller, Larry Geller has a book out now. That's a very good book. There are a lot of other books that are very good. Don't get me wrong.
What about Marty Lacker's book?
Again, Marty Lacker's wife was a very jealous woman.
I'll write again. Possibly this might be rumours. I got nothing definite to this. It's supposed to relate Elvis with homosexual activities.
But yeah, this is what I heard. I heard that.
That's Marty Lacker, yeah.
No, not Marty Lacker. Marty Lacker was the guy who came out with the book. It was another guy named Lamar Fife. You know, Lamar Fife was the one. But, you know, like a famous painter. He's not famous until after he dies, right? Prior to that, his work is lousy. He dies, and he's a master painter.
A lot of people, I think a lot of people appreciated Elvis more now than they ever did before.
Yes. And he was.
There's just a lot of people, it's the same old story, you don't appreciate something until it's too late.
Well, that's it. Any other questions?
Well, I think that's it. So I think we're calling it a night there. Thanks very much indeed, Ed, once again. And thank you all. And it's the karate exhibition coming on next. So thank you very much again.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's now going to be a short demonstration of Kenpo Karate by Mr. Bob Rose and other senior instructors, UK instructors. We have other people from Kenpo in the audience. Short demonstration from the UK Kenpo instructors team. Thank you.
It is.